This is Capital Games Movie Club. I am the Wiz. I know you guys are probably you're listening to this and going, a review on Thursday? What is this, Wiz? Are you actually doing more work? No. Guys. Just hold up. That's not what's happening here. Today, I thought we'd do an extra review with somebody that I've known for quite a while. And we're diversifying the amount of people that we have here at Capital Games, specifically for the movie club. And I want to introduce somebody that I've known for quite a long time. She is, let me read this here, a self-care advocate through beauty and wellness products. She runs the site KimShactman.com. Let me introduce you to Kim Shactman. Kim, thank you for coming to Capital Games Movie Club.
Thank you so much for having me, Wiz. I'm excited to be here, and yeah, I'm pumped.
I gotta say,
to get started.
We've known each other for quite a long time, and it's weird for you to call me by my nickname, but I appreciate it.
It is very weird to call you by your nickname, but that's okay.
Yes. Okay. All right. So today, I didn't mention anything in the other podcast because I wanted to be a little bit of a surprise, but today, me and Kim are reviewing the 2013 crime psychological drama Prisoners, starring Hugh Jackman, Jake Gyllenhaal, Terrence Howard, Viola Davis, Maria Bello, and Paul Dano, and it's directed by Denis Villenueve. Kim, I don't know. Do you know a lot about film when it comes to, let's say, filmmakers, directors, writers? Are you aware of that?
Oh, I was waiting for you to ask me that question.
Go ahead.
Because I know you do.
Yes.
For myself, no. I mean, I love movies, but I don't love them as much as you do.
Okay.
And when it comes to directing and writing, I have different genres that I like to watch more of. Right. For example, like true crime, etc. I'm not as versed in cinematography and so forth as you are.
Okay.
But it's exciting. I'm excited to be here and learn more.
That's fine. That is fine. I'm just going to go over a little. Those who have listened to the podcast previously are aware how this goes, but I'm going to go a little in depth into the movie before we get started with the review. And I'm going to talk about Denis Villeneuve. Villeneuve is a big director right now. He's done a lot of big movies. He directed Dune. He also did Arrival, which both got Academy Award nominations for Best Picture in the past 5 years. So he is a very well-respected director now. But what makes him interesting in context to Prisoners is that this is his first English language film that he directed in Hollywood specifically. And this comes from the fact that he made international waves in his film Incendies. I think it was in 2010. That garnered a lot of attention, a lot of awards. It got nominated for a Best International Picture at the Oscars that year. And if you were to look at IMDb, it's in the top 250. Incendies is in like 103, 104. So it's a very well-respected, very beloved movie for people who've watched it, which now makes a little sense as to how somebody who is, with Hollywood, very fresh, got such a excellent cast. You have Hugh Jackman, who's got Academy Award nominations and Tony Award nominations, Viola Davis, Terrence Howard, Paul Dano, who's a very well-respected actor. You have a ton of actors in this movie that for someone who's in the first time in Hollywood got all this cast, and that's a very rare feat, which also is a testament to how much they respected his work in Incendies. So with that said, why don't we get started with the review of Prisoners? When we decided on this movie, I mentioned that I have already watched this movie and I knew the twists and turns of what was going on. And then when we got on here to talk about the movie, you mentioned that you just realized you watched it too at some point, correct?
Yeah, I saw it years ago, and I was like, I watched it a few days back just to, make sure. At first I was like, I couldn't remember this movie. And then I started watching and I was like, oh yes, I have seen this one. Mm-hmm. So, and I was very excited after watching it because it just kind of like struck me again at how good it was. So.
Mm-hmm. Right. So why don't we dive into certain aspects? I know you said you don't know much about directing, writing, and cinematography, but we'll get into it a little bit. So I want to talk about the way the film's shot in this, and with a lot of true crime movies. You watch a lot of true crime movies that you've told me.
A ton.
Okay.
A ton.
So let me ask you: are there things in the movie that from other true crime movies that differentiate itself from others, specifically in the way it looks? You can talk about lighting, color, all that stuff, but in the way it looks, does it differentiate itself at all to you?
So right off the bat, I made a mental note of the lighting and the color.
Okay.
I noticed even from the very beginning of the movie, like the first few scenes, everything's very dark, dreary, a lot of rain, right?
Yes.
In the movie. So it fits the tone of the storyline and the mood of the characters. So I felt like they did a really great job with that. With true crime and stuff, I immediately was like, wow, this is fantastic, right? It just fits the tone of the story.
Right. It's very oppressive. It fits in the theme of the movie, which and the title of the movie called Prisoners, because it feels like all these characters are just a prisoner in this one place, both mentally and physically, that they can't escape from, even from like the beginning. And this is a movie that doesn't have any light in it at all. It is a dark movie. It's not so dark where you feel icky after watching it. I've seen films where you're watching it and you just feel really wrong after watching it after a certain point.
Or even really depressed, like after watching it. But it's just different. It was very hard for me to explain and capture, because it was just, you know what it was? It was dark enough.
Okay. Yeah.
It was just dark enough,
It's a movie that I think in another director's hands, and with Villeneuve's hands, it struck a balance where, with the type of things that they talk about in the movie, which we'll get into spoilers, the type of subjects that they get into in the movie. Let's talk about the main one: child abduction, torture in this, where other directors might have wanted to skew a little more visceral, a little more violent, in a lot darker tone, to make you want to have the visual of the horribleness of what's going on. Like, for example, a lot of horror and true crime movies, when they go for the abduction, they would want to focus in on the kids and them being abducted and what they're going through. I was making it a more upsetting film. But this film doesn't do that, because it's upsetting enough that these parents lost their kids, and the movie, instead of going that route, says, no, it's upsetting enough watching these people go through all this stuff.
Yeah.
There is not necessary at this point to actually make it so upsetting that you're actually watching these kids get tortured, hurt, and going through these distressing things. The distress is on the main characters more than the kids themselves in this.
Right, which are the parents, and then obviously the detective.
Right. So, and that's like, and the themes and the way that the film is shot are very well done when it comes to, like, just the way the film's shot and everything. It feels very oppressive, and it feels very deliberate to what they're doing, which also adds to the writing. The thing that, even though I watched this a while ago, and I still remember parts of it because of just how shocking it was when the movie plays out. The thing that I honed in on pretty quickly in this is that even though I knew what was going on, I could see the gears of which all the red herrings happened. With crime movies, specifically, when they do a red herring, mostly, a lot of the times in lesser written crime movies, the red herring is just it just so happens this happened. Whereas, and it just doesn't make sense for the rest of the story. In this movie, all the red herrings, all the false leads that happened still make sense within the context of what's going on in the movie in this.
No, I completely agree. I was shocked at some of the twists and turns that they threw in there. that led you to believe it was one person, to find out that that person had something to do with, some sort of crime within the families or with other people, but they weren't the main perpetrators. Right. So I found that very interesting, and it just totally threw me off my tracks. And usually I'm pretty good at figuring out, who done it type of deal. So I just was I was very impressed by the writing and that fact.
Right. And another part I think that the film does really well in this specifically, and something that crime films usually have a very hard time dealing with, or in most cases they just don't deal with it, period, is the basis of morality in this movie. I felt throughout the entirely watching the film and going through it, especially to the end, that there were no moral winners in this. There was no one that was a clear, even though there was a protagonist and antagonist, there is no good guy in this. And when they do that, usually it's a little more heavy-handed. Some of the and we'll get into spoilers when that happens, but some of the things that the main character does in this movie are reprehensible. And in the back of your mind, you're understanding why he's doing it, and maybe you even sympathize. But by the end, you have this moral quandary. I felt I had this moral quandary towards the end of the movie where I get why he's doing it, but it really...
Is it still okay? Is this all right? Is this,
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt the same exact way. For once, this is a movie that we're agreeing on, Wiz.
Oh, yes. Something I'm used to throughout all my life is that people just don't agree with what I'm saying. But yes, okay.
I felt the same exact way towards the end. I was just kind of caught up in that quandary. I was like, I don't know if this was okay. But
so one thing that crime movies that deal with these types of themes seem to do wrong in this, depending on the film, is that when they play the morality game, sometimes they turn the main character or the character that they're trying to question the motives of their morality into out-and-out monsters by the end of the film. And by saying the thing is, is there a difference between the good guys and the bad guys? I'm not so sure. And I don't... Yeah, and I don't think they go that far in this.
No, I don't think they do. I didn't feel that way. I didn't feel that any character was really a monster. Well, maybe one, but
even that. But that's I want to push back on that. But that's towards spoilers. Even with the person you're thinking about, there is a justification as to why she became that way, which is another thing that crime movies tend to not do. We'll get into it, spoilers, but in this aspect, you're right. There is one person in this that is clearly a monster in this. But even when she is, it's justifiable to a certain extent. And
we'll get into that.
We'll get into that. So why don't we dive off of direction and writing, and we'll go into performances. I want to know what you think the best performance of the film was.
I can tell you who it's not.
Go ahead.
I wasn't thrilled with Jake Gyllenhaal.
He has nice hair.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I'd have to say Hugh Jackman was my favorite. I thought he was excellent.
Okay. I love Hugh Jackman. I
just love him in general.
Yes.
I think he's a great actor.
Yes, he is. He has a great performance in this. And I want to give Jake Gyllenhaal a little bit of credit on this. He's basically doing the basic cop thing in these roles. Mm-hmm. The point of view of the film is not on him. It's about the father in this. And they try to do a little bit of depth with the character, but there isn't much there. It's a big problem I have with the writing of the films. I'm not going to give Jake Gyllenhaal that problem in that. Although I do find it unnerving that he does not blink in the movie, period.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't know. I just didn't feel... I know this sounds terrible, but I feel like he's too much of a pretty boy for the role. Like his face, his features, you know what I mean? Like I don't see like a hardcore detective in him.
Oh, I see a hotshot detective. I see somebody who's very
hotshot, but
which I think is what Loki was in Detective Loki, which a terrible name, by the way. But
that sounds like a dog
or a Marvel character. But I don't want to necessarily give that blame to Gyllenhaal in this, because Gyllenhaal is a very good actor and can perform very well in very dynamic roles. I just think the writing that he was given wasn't that hot for his character. So he had to overcompensate for what he had in that. Especially in some later scenes where he gets a little miffed when things start to spiral out of control. But I guess I kind of agree with you. I want to excuse it a little bit, but you are right. I think his performance is kind of the weakest in this, but was it enough to detract from the film for you, or was it?
No, definitely not enough to detract. Like it was fine for what it was. I don't know who else I would have seen cast in that role, but like I just couldn't picture him as I don't know. I guess it was mediocre to me.
Okay, that's
I think
fair.
you really stole the show, but like you said, maybe it's because of the writing.
I just think he wasn't given much to work with on that. I think that's the thing with him in that part. He's done a similar role like that in a film called Nightcrawler, where he is not that he's a detective, but I
haven't seen that yet.
He is an out and out sociopath in that movie, and
maybe we'll have to watch that one.
Oh, it's a great movie, and it is fantastic, and he pulls those driven but very amoral people very well, and I think that's what he was kind of going for with this, but the writing didn't back it up. So I think that might be what the issue is with Jake Gyllenhaal's performance. But I think you are right. His performance might be the weakest, but weakest in the fact of he was given an assignment and it didn't really land very well.
For sure. But I also want to mention, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, but Paul Dano?
Paul Dano, yes.
Oh my goodness. That was a pretty solid performance as well.
Very, yes. Paul Dano is an actor that has done a lot of great performances. He's recently in The Fabelmans, which got nominated for Best Picture this year. He's also done films like Swiss Army Man, which is very weird, and Wildlife. And I think the one that people will get mad at if I don't mention is There Will Be Blood. He's fantastic in There Will Be Blood in that movie, where he plays a mentally deranged preacher. We'll call him on that one. He is a fantastic actor, and he pulls off this role really, really well in this.
Yes. I was like, wow.
To me, he's the performance of the movie in this, because
that's your opinion on that?
Yes, yeah. I think Hugh Jackman is great. I love Hugh Jackman too in his roles, especially in like Les Mis and Logan. Like I think those are his two best films.
Les Mis is one of my favorites.
Yes, Les Mis is. There are some who don't like Les Mis, and I understand kind of why, but I
loved it.
Okay.
We digress.
I'm sorry. I love Les Mis, but the big problem I have with that movie is Russell Crowe. That's.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Wow, we're really agreeing on a lot tonight.
See, if you would get to know me a little better, Kim, you would realize this. But all you do is like, oh, Wiz has bad taste in movies. He's an idiot. Blah 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 blah.
No.
My name is Kim. Yeah. Okay.
So just for our listeners, I can tell you that I have known Wiz for I don't even know like 20 years now, and
25 years.
25 years to be exact, and literally like. For the longest time, we would always butt heads on movies, right?
Yes.
Like
yes.
Anything we watched, I loved it. He hated it. He loved it. I could care less about it, right? Like it was just really funny. So for us to be doing this together is just a trip.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yes, definitely. Which is why I was a little. I'm gonna be honest with you. I was a little afraid of doing this because but see, the thing with I love Zero. I think Zero is a great guy, but he's the type of person that doesn't like to get argumentative. He just likes to be like, it's your opinion, we got different opinion, whatever. You're the type of person to go, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, I'll lay it all out there for you. I have no problem doing that. I've known you long enough.
I know. But God, where were we on this? Okay, but we were
talking about Dano.
Okay, so Paul Dano. Okay, great actor. He has a really good performance, and it's the type of role that has a lot of layers to it, and he performs with those layers very well in this. Because again, a lesser actor would have probably stuck to one lane, and then when the twists and turns happen in this movie, it wouldn't feel genuine. But with him, he gives it enough pathos and enough depth that it is highly believable when he goes through those changes and goes through those parts in the movie. And when you then understand what happens, it makes all the sense in the world why he's acting those certain ways. So
exactly,
it takes a really good actor to do that type of role, and he is fantastic in this, which is why I give him I think the best performance instead of Jackman. Even though I think Jackman is very good in this.
I almost feel like Jackman is just kind of like the obvious choice too.
Right.
Just because of like his history, like in films. But no, I don't know. Now you're like persuading me into Dano. I think you're right.
Well, but the thing also with Jackman, I would say, is that like Jackman's character is the one you're supposed to follow and sympathize with, who goes through all the changes and goes through all the showy performances, the showy parts of the performances. So it doesn't surprise me that someone would say, "Oh, it's Jackman," clearly, because you see more of Jackman, and Jackman has more time in that where he nails it out of the park. I'm not saying that Jackman's performance is bad; it's very good. But when you look at Dano and the layers that he has to deal with this character, that's why I would go Dano in this. But if you want to say Jackman, perfectly fine. I would not disagree. But I think Dano's is particularly great in this and stands out to me in a certain sense.
Coming from like an emotional perspective, I kind of like clicked with Jackman's performance more, which makes sense, right? That's what they're trying to have the viewers feel. But for Dano, it's like, for me, it would be like second best, because again, they're trying to portray him as like a creep, really, if you think about it. And he does a good job being creepy for sure.
You know what? Before we get into more depth with that, why don't we head into spoilers, and we'll get into more about, I would say, Dano's.
I know, I'm trying so hard not to ruin it for our viewers.
Good. Okay. So here's what we'll do. We're going to head into spoilers for Prisoners, okay? If you have not seen the movie and you do not want it spoiled at all, you can stop this, come back when you've watched it, and then come back and listen to us talk about spoilers. We are going to in spoilers in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so you mentioned that Paul Dano's character, his name is Alex Jones, which when I realized the name, I was like, oh, I forgot about that. But, okay, so the character's name is Alex in this. You find out a lot about Alex in this movie, where as you watch the film, it goes from, I think, and another thing that's great about the writing in this, it goes from creep to damaged, to sympathetic, to victim, in a fell swoop throughout the entire film. That I think is not only a testament to the writing, but how Dano performs this character. The issue that might arise in this, that doesn't happen in this movie, is that when they do this type of thing, which is rare in these movies, but when they do, where they comes from the guy's an obvious bad guy to he obviously is not a bad guy, they don't deal in the shades of gray. They just turn him into obvious bad guy to obvious good guy. And Prisoners doesn't do that. Prisoners, even though it is clear that Alex is a victim of what his quote-unquote aunt did to him,
right,
they still don't excuse what he's done when it comes down to it. I'm wondering, do you understand? I guess I have to ask, do you know the timeline by the end of the movie of what the events are that happened throughout the film?
It's hard to understand kind of at the very end. I mean, I'm assuming that he took the girls, right? Like with the RV.
Right.
At towards the beginning, he took the girls and then brought them back to the aunt's house, and she was going to put them in that hole, right?
Yes.
That hole in the ground underneath the car. But I don't know for sure, like, if that's actually what happened.
No, that's exactly what happened. But the thing that I do really like about this movie is that they don't spell it out. A lot of crime movies, when they do these types of movies, they like to then spoon feed the audience at the end. And goes, oh, here is what happened. I am detective.
Retrace their steps of like, this is what went down.
Like make it obvious. Like make it obvious as to what happened, and they don't do that. They do it very subtly. So here is the timeline that I see it as. Okay, the woman that it was Aunt Holly, which is I think the name of the character that the Dano's character is being taken care of. Holly and her husband lose their child, and after they lose their child, and she says this in the movie, they start to hate. They were pious people, that they started to hate God, and since they did that, they started kidnapping children. They kidnapped Alex at some point. And there is a scene in that movie where he was kidnapped around 85, 86. And then they keep him, and they drug him, and they take care of him. That's why he is the way he is, because they gave him some kind of LSD cocktail that makes him who he is right now. Like, his brain is so messed up. That's why he is that way.
And is that the same cocktails that she uses throughout the film?
No, if you're talking about the drink,
yeah.
No, that's a sedative. At the end of the movie where they show the needle, that's the thing that I think that it was. Okay.
But they don't spell that out for you.
No, they do not. So what ends up happening? You remember Bob Taylor, the one that with the one red herring with the person that was with the snakes and the kids' clothing?
Oh yes, I forgot about him.
Okay, he was a victim of these two people. Apparently, what happens is after that happens, the father feels guilty, goes to that preacher and that priest.
Yeah.
Confesses, and what the priest does is he locks him into that basement and kills him.
Yep, because he found out about all the kids.
Mm-hmm. So after that happened, the kidnapping stopped. And then that is what brings everything into motion of what happens in the movie in this. Dano's character, Alex, is got the mentality of someone, and I think Loki says it in the beginning of the movie, he's got the mentality of somebody who has a 10 IQ, or somebody who is of like 8 or 9 years old at this point. He still thinks he is a kid. So the film essentially says he didn't capture those kids to hurt them. He did it to play with them. It was Holly who's the one that then abducted them. That's why when he said in the beginning of the movie when...
I just wanted to play with them.
Not just that, they didn't cry until I left them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's what happened. And then when Joy gets freed is when Jackman's character starts realizing that who was the kidnapper, because Joy said, I heard you. Basically, I heard you in the room where I was in. And that's what made Jackman realize that's where his daughter was at that point.
So what I don't understand is why the aunt took the little girls out of the hole in the ground and then put them in the house.
That's a good question.
That's what I didn't understand. Like, why not just crawl down there and give them the injection?
I think the only thing I can think of is that because Alex was being captured and was not around, maybe she was lonely. Maybe she wanted companionship. Maybe that's the only thing I can think of at that point. But
that was the only thing that struck me as a little odd.
These things are not pointed out throughout the entire film, and they go into the lot of the depth of characters in this. That if you want, like, let's say you're not interested in character work and like an in-depth character, you just want to go through the crime aspect of the movie. This gives you a lot of details that you can sink your teeth in without really pointing out what. And I definitely like that about the film, but it does cost itself at a certain point when it comes to character, because I do like character work and I do like good writing and well-defined characters, but in this movie, I would say the character work is it's good, but it's not great. I don't know if I watched it a third time if I'm going to get the same effect to it. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, well, like I said, I saw this movie a few years ago, and it didn't stick with me enough to remember it, right?
Okay,
And
right.
that right there tells you a lot. But I don't know. I don't know if I would watch it a third time. I think two is enough for me.
Okay. I think the twist is what I remembered from this the most. That's why I was like, oh man, if you haven't seen this is an interesting movie. The twist is what really got...
For first-timers, it's perfect.
Right. Second time, you then see the depth and everything from the way that the story yarns itself into... The thing that a lot of crime movies do when they have red herrings is the red herring essentially has nothing to do with the crime. But in this movie, the red herrings aren't necessarily red herrings. They're just connections to what the eventual crime is.
Right.
But the main focus was essentially the crime, was essentially the kidnapping. And it devolved Keller Dover, the Hugh Jackman's character, from being one stereotype to another. And with that kind of character depth, I was really relying mostly on Jackman's performance to carry it through. And that's what he did, and that's the type of actor he is. He can do that. He can carry that performance. But if I were to be honest and say, is the character writing great? Not really. It's okay. I would say it's standard crime stuff in this point, where it's good enough to get the main part of the crime across. Which the thing is that's most important in the movie is the crime and solving it. Okay?
Yeah, and it definitely portrays that, I think, easily. So, and not to kind of get off track here, but
God.
I thought that when I first watched this, I thought that this was a true story. I mean, obviously it doesn't depict it that it is in the movie, so it must not have been. But I Googled it. I was like, is this a true story? Yeah. And I guess it's based on a book, but or a short story, actually. So, when I'm questioning if something's a true story or not, it just makes it seem more real, right? So, in my mind, anyway.
Oh no, I understand that definitely.
So I have to mention one scene where I thought was going to go one way, but it didn't. Okay. So there's one scene where Hugh Jackman is basically telling his son, because don't forget his son and his wife are in this movie as well. Keller is telling his son that he needs to really look out for his mother, because the mother is just so emotionally distraught that she can't even function. Yeah. And he gives the son, I think they're sedative pills or medications or something, and says, hey, please, make sure your mom takes these and look out for her while I'm gone. And I thought the son was gonna basically commit suicide with those pills. That's what I thought was going to happen, because I'm like, anyone that gives, a young boy medication in a time of despair, his sister's gone, is may end up doing something with that medication that he shouldn't be, because there's no one there to watch him. So that was something I thought was going to happen, but didn't.
And I'm glad they didn't, because that would have been more emotionally manipulative than anything else.
Oh, I am too. It's just something I thought that was going to happen, and they didn't do anything. It didn't happen.
Is that a common trope that happens in crime movies? I watch a bit of crime
I feel like there's always another child that suffers from the kidnapping, even though it didn't happen to them.
Right. No, absolutely. Here's the other thing. They didn't put much thought into the characters other than the principal actors. This movie would have been a lot more devastating if you would have had more time with the girls in this movie, and you got to know their personalities and who they are, and then boom, they're gone. That would have been a much more devastating thing to do in this, but they didn't do that, which is why I think the most important thing about this movie is the crime than it is the characters. Because if it was the characters, I think there would have been more time with the family as a family.
To form a connection with them.
Right. So, in that aspect, I will say this again, the crime aspect of the movie is great. I think it's very good in this. But when it comes to character work and the way the characters are written and how, not necessarily how they're performed, but how they evolve into the movie, it's kind of standard. But it's the performances of the actors that jump it up to something better than what the writing actually is, I think.
Yes.
Okay.
How did you feel about the Terrence Howard's wife?
Viola Davis, right?
Yes, when she finds out that they are holding Alex Jones captive. I thought that was a interesting dynamic there.
I thought it was unnecessary. But I also am a person that, you know what my thought process was with that is, to be honest? I think the director knew that he had, are you familiar with Viola Davis at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
She's the one that was in The Help, right?
Yes. A phenomenal actress. An actress that, even with the praises she gets, I think she deserves more. She's a fantastic actress. You don't just put an actress like that in a kind of role that literally does nothing but sits there and just looks despondent. You want to have more with that actress specifically, because no matter what you give her, she's gonna knock it out of the park. There's a movie that she was in called Doubt, where she's in the movie for literally 3 minutes, and it's the best performance of the film. Like she is fantastic in almost everything she does. I think they added that scene. Now I might be wrong, but I think they put that scene in just to have a scene with her that had something in it. Because if it were any other actress, I think that scene would have been cut, because that scene was not really that necessary.
I can agree there. I mean, really, what was it for, right? Like, I guess it's just to show too, how far a parent would go for their child. Maybe, I don't know.
I think it was to show Terrence Howard's character, to give him an out to not be a part of what Hugh Jackman's character was doing. Instead of just giving him the standard, it's wrong to do this, you shouldn't do this. It is, well, my wife said I shouldn't.
I think
that's what it was in that aspect, which I think I would have much rather if it been Terrence Howard's character saying, I don't want any part of this. And I think that would have been better than to say, my wife said I shouldn't.
He's almost like he was just looking for the wife's approval.
Right.
At that point, once she found out, obviously.
But it is also a difference in dynamic, because Hugh Jackman's wife, played by Maria Bello, she's absent, essentially. Like, she is not there. She is not even...
she's like down for the count in bed. They don't even... She's just... Yeah.
She is not even a factor. She has literally nothing to provide in this. So I think that's like the difference, to show the difference between the two families, where they're both grieving and dealing with this, but they're both taking it in different ways. Where I would probably equate, to a certain extent, but not totally, Terrence Howard's character to Maria Bello's, and maybe Jackman's is more like Viola Davis's to a certain extent, to make that connection. But that connection doesn't do anything, really. Right. All it does is, to me, it just
shows that, like, it almost like husband and wife, like, opposites attract, right? That's like really it.
Right, and it was kind of unnecessary. But I think, honestly, and I might be wrong on this, I think, honestly, they just needed a good scene with Viola Davis. And when you have an actress like that, and directors do this, when you have a very good actress, or an actor or actress, that might have a small role, but you realize they're more talented than that, you write a scene for them.
Interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah. Some actors, like, that's happened with, that happens in TV too. Like, have you watched Breaking Bad?
Of course I have.
Okay. Did you know that Jesse Pinkman was supposed to die at the end of season 1?
No, really?
Yeah, that was the original plan. He was supposed to die in season 1, but because they liked him and they thought he was so good at it, they wrote him back in.
Okay.
So that makes sense. A lot of movies, TV shows do that. When they know they have a good actor who has a lot of charisma and can do really well in the role, they then rewrite it and just go, okay, we gotta keep him in. So that's what happens a lot in that case, and I think that's what happened, because like I said, if you had a lesser actress playing that role, they wouldn't have bothered. I think they would have cut that scene. It would have meant nothing, or they would have rewritten a scene where Terrence Howard's character would have come up to that conclusion on his own to not be a part of it anymore. I think is what would have happened.
Agree with you there.
Okay,
I do agree with you. That snake scene with the they were like, what are they, like carrier tubs or something? I don't even know what they're. That was like I was like, there's got to be a body in there. There's got to be. So that threw me for a loop a little bit too.
Right. And in other crime movies, which I think is why they do the crime aspect of this movie really well. In other crime movies, that would have just been a red herring, would have been random, and it would have been like, oh, that was weird. Anyway, moving on. But they mixed it into the movie very well, to a certain extent, to a great extent on this one. With the justification they gave, I think a lesser writer would have been like, oh, okay, hold on, that's fucking random. Like, hold on a second. You mean to tell me the snake person is somehow connected to the child captor? Hold on, how? It's like, that seems pretty contrived, but it makes sense in this movie as the person that is the snake guy with all the children's clothing was a victim of these people, and his brain was so messed up is because he's trying to copycat everything that's happened in this. They explain that really well, but they don't explain it in an obvious way. They explain it.
They don't. It took me a little while to understand that, and I think the item in the movie that obviously connected it all, at least personally for me, was the mazes, right?
Yes.
The mazes with the necklace on the guy that was killed in the priest basement. The mazes all over the gentleman's wall. His name's Bob Taylor in the movie, but I cannot pronounce his last name. David Dasmelchin. Can't say that last name.
Dasmelchin? Okay.
Yes.
I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
He had mazes in his house just drawn all over the wall, right? That's just like something that it's almost like a trigger for him based on his past experiences. So I don't know. I think that really clicked for me when I saw the mazes on the necklace and then on the walls and so forth.
I'm sorry. When you see the photo in Holly's house of her husband with the maze necklace, I think is when it was like, oh shit, it's all connected. I'm like, oh my God. Like,
and it's so funny because when I watched this movie years ago, I caught on to that way ahead of time in the movie, but then when I watched it the second time, I forgot about it. So yeah, it's just interesting. I caught on to that pretty quickly because when they show the gentleman in the basement, obviously, gagged and dead, and they show his necklace in that scene. So, and then when they showed the Bob Taylor in his house with the snakes and everything, I was just like, oh, the maze. Like, it just clicked for me automatically. And then also Alex Jones, Paul Dano, he was drawing a maze when, Gyllenhaal was questioning him. So it's kind of all connected. I
really want somebody to edit this movie, but instead of having Paul Dano, just have actual Alex Jones in the role. He's in the torture box. Like, I'm gonna turn the frogs gay. Ah!
Oh my God.
Don't make me do this.
That would be so weird.
That'd be kind of fucked up, actually.
It would be.
I kind of want to talk about Loki a little bit, but there's honestly not a lot in there. It's standard cop stuff, like, well, it's being a detective. They're not gonna like you, and they're gonna blame. Like, okay.
I noticed too, like with the writing, like he was just like, I don't know, he was just so tired of like dealing with the parents. Which like he just didn't seem as like sympathetic, I felt like, to the parents. And I know it's because he's trying to play a detective and just doing his job, but I was kind of like, hey, like obviously they're going to be upset. They're the parents of children that just got taken. Like,
but on the other hand, Keller was on the attack the entire time.
Oh yeah, but I mean, wouldn't you be? If somebody stole your daughter?
I would be. But then that would be, I think that's within the character's arrogance of Detective Loki in this. If you remember, apparently he, and the wife mentioned this, that he solves all of his cases. That was his big thing. He solves all
the pressure was already on.
Right. In that aspect, but that's also, I think, a fault in the writing in that aspect because, or maybe they did write it and they just didn't really, they cut all that stuff out. They didn't go into that type of depth. But it would be kind of weird to give the character that is a detective depth, but not much to the parents, where you think there would be more depth necessary in that aspect. So, again, I think that was just a decision to make the crime the feature than the characters in this. Let me ask one last question before we end the spoilers, get to final thoughts. Did Loki find Keller?
Oh, you're going to ask me this. I really hate the fact that they ended it that way. I mean, I hate it, but I don't hate it, right?
I love ambiguous endings, so I'm fine with it.
Do you?
Yes.
I was just like, did he find him? Like, the whistle's blowing. Like, obviously you heard it, so he must have found him. My question was, what did they do with him afterwards?
Arrest him. If they found him, they arrest him. He tortured a guy.
I know. But there's that, like, moral compass, right? Like, that we were talking about, like...
Right.
I don't know. I just feel like that's a tough one. I mean, obviously he needs to be arrested because he, almost killed a kid.
Okay.
But at the same time, I'm like, he wanted his daughter back. Like, it's his child. It's his flesh and blood, obviously.
You're right.
You do what you need to do.
I think the movie points out very well that Loki did find him. Here's why, okay? You hear throughout the entire film that he is a great detective. How did he find the hidden passageway in the priest's house?
Oh, yeah, that's true. When he was, like, touching around behind the walls of the fridge and everything.
When he noticed the plug and it was odd how it was plugged in, and he noticed the door. It shows that he is a very good detective, and he detects things that are off in this.
Right.
So I definitely think he found him.
Oh, yeah, I think he did, too. It just stinks that they don't, they don't show you.
I think, but see, here's the thing. I think that's fine, because in the end, I feel that if it were to have an overly happy ending, it would have felt really odd in this movie specifically. Because,
well, again, circling all the way back to the beginning of this review, right, with the cinematography and how dark everything is,
yes,
it wouldn't make sense.
How so?
It wouldn't make sense to have that happy ending. Like, then you're just going to bring all this light into the end of the movie? Like, I don't know. That just doesn't seem right to me.
I don't know if I would agree with that specifically, because, yeah, but you would still have that, I think, that added complication of, yes, he's found, but he's going to jail. Like, he's not seeing his daughter. And he's not seeing his daughter for a long time. But I think the film didn't want to have the question of, was the evil things that he did justified? I don't think they want to have that conversation. And I think that's why they left that ending ambiguous.
Well, then that makes it almost like a whole other movie at that point.
Right. Right.
Putting him on trial and so forth. So yeah.
Right. So I am fine with. I actually like for the most part. I like.
No, I think it was done well. I think the ending was great. I really do. I'm just always like, what happened? I'm like that type of person, but no, I think overall they did it. They did a good job with it.
Okay, we're gonna get into our final thoughts of Prisoners. Kim, what I do here is that the final thoughts, we give a final statement of what we feel about the film, and then we give it a 5-star rating. So if you don't want to do the rating, that's fine. If you want to just go by what your final thoughts are of the film, knock yourself out. I'm going to let you start. Go ahead.
Okay. So I thought that the film was well done, especially from a crime aspect, being a true crime junkie. I felt that they really, like you said, they honed in on the actual crime. I thought the acting was decent. Again, not a huge fan of Gyllenhaal in this, but Wiz actually opened my eyes to the writing portion of it, and he really didn't have that much to work with there, right? Mm-hmm. So overall, I really did like the movie. Would I watch the movie for a third time? Definitely not. Would I recommend it to first-timers? For sure. The twists and turns within the movie were excellent, and they threw me for a loop, which usually doesn't happen. Usually I can figure things out right off the bat. I'd say for a star rating, I would probably give it like a 3.5 to 4 out of 5. Because again, like, it was pretty realistic to the point where I had to Google to see if this was actually a true story. So those are my final thoughts there.
Okay. I'm going to share your rating. I think it's 3.5. I thought it was 3.5 when I saw it the first time. I think it stays in that area. I'm going to echo a lot of your points. I think the crime aspect of the movie was the thing that they were working on the most, and because they did that part of the film is done really well. So if you are specifically watching this for the true crime angle, I think you're going to really enjoy it. However, if you're looking for a psychological character study where the film does try to attempt those things by having the questions of the morality of Keller and what he does to try and get his daughter back, I don't think is as in-depth as it could have been. But the performances that the film has from Jackman, Dano, I would also say Howard at this as well, and Melissa Leo, who plays the aunt in this. I think those performances carry that script to another level that it might not have with lesser actor. I also would give it 3.5. I think as a crime movie, it is very good. But if I were going to basically give it as a whole package, there are flaws in it. And the flaws are that the characters aren't as well defined. And I would have liked that a little bit more in this. But 3.5, I agree. If you haven't seen this and you're into true crime, watch it. It's a great movie. And it's on Netflix, so it's easy to access too. You know?
Definitely.
So check it out on Netflix if you are interested.